Welcome back, everybody, to the Deep Dive. This time, we're taking a deep dive into the world of water treatment with the Va Tech Wabag Ltd. Annual Report for fiscal year 2023-24. We've got a whole stack of reports, articles, notes, all sorts of stuff, and we're really going to figure out, what makes this company tick. It's a company with, a century of history behind it.
It really is, and to see how they've navigated a whole century of global changes and still emerged as a leader in such an important sector, that's incredible. And I think this report gives us a really unique perspective on all the challenges and the opportunities in water management today.
Yeah, whole century. That means they've been through world wars, they've been through, the rise of the internet, it's wild. But I'm really interested in, where they stand today in this market. It seems like water treatment, it's a market that's just going to keep growing and growing.
Oh, absolutely. The global water and wastewater treatment market, it's projected to hit over $500 billion by 2030. And did you know that right now, over 1 billion people don't even have access to clean water?
Yeah, it's a crazy statistic.
It is. And by 2050, the demand for water is projected to jump another 20, maybe even 25%. So we're talking a massive amount of people that need access to clean water.
Yeah, so the need is definitely there, but what about the competition? Wabag isn't the only player in this market, right?
No, definitely not. They're up against some pretty big names. You got Suez, Veolia, Xylem, and these are companies operating both domestically and internationally. But Wabag, they've got a few advantages. First of all, they've got a century of experience working in different parts of the world, all sorts of different regulations.
Yeah, it's got to count for something, right? Especially in an industry as complex as water treatment.
Absolutely. You can't just build that kind of experience overnight. And they've also got this really interesting growth strategy called RIDI, and it seems to be working. They're focusing on projects that have guaranteed funding, shorter deadlines, and a really strong emphasis on using technology.
Okay, so that's their game plan, but what do the numbers say? How's their financial health?
Well, they've managed to increase their profits even with all the global economic uncertainty going on, which is pretty impressive. And their order book is at an all-time high. Plus, they've gone from being in net debt to having net cash.
That's a big turnaround.
It is. It really shows they're being careful with their money and that their RIDI strategy is actually working.
So profits are good, debt's under control, they've got a plan for growth. Sounds promising. But what about their actual business? What are their main sources of income?
So they do a lot. Desalination plants, sewage treatment plants, industrial wastewater treatment. They're like a one-stop shop for anything water treatment related.
Nice. Having a diverse range of projects probably helps them stay stable even when the economy is a bit shaky, right?
Exactly. And they're smart about it. They're expanding into new markets and trying out different parts of the industry to spread the risk and, take advantage of new opportunities as they come up.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But with all this growth, they got to be facing some risks too, right? What are they saying about the potential downsides?
Well, they do talk about the increasing competition in the water treatment market. As the demand grows, more and more companies are jumping in, which puts pressure on everyone to keep prices down and be innovative.
Yeah, competition can be tough. What else are they worried about?
They also mentioned that they rely quite a bit on government contracts. And while those can be steady, they can also be affected by things like budget cuts, political changes, and, all the uncertainty in the world right now.
Right. So if things shift politically or the economy takes a hit, those government contracts might not be so reliable anymore. But it sounds like they're aware of these risks.
They definitely are. They're trying to diversify their income by getting more industrial clients and by expanding their operations and maintenance services, which gives them a more stable and predictable income stream.
It sounds like they're thinking long-term, trying to build a business that can ride out the inevitable ups and downs of the market.
Exactly. And that kind of thinking is reflected in their strong financial performance and how they're committed to creating value for their stakeholders over the long run.
Speaking of stakeholders, let's talk about the people behind Wabag. Who are the key players driving this company forward after a whole century?
Well, the main man is Rajiv Mittal. He's the chairman and managing director. He owns a big chunk of the company and has been really important in shaping their growth strategy.
Sounds like a leader with a clear vision. Who else is part of the team?
We've got Esfarada Rajan. He's the whole-time director and chief growth officer. He's the guy pushing Wabag into new markets and sectors.
So experience and a clear vision at the top. That's a good start for any company, especially in an industry as complex and constantly changing as water treatment. But let's get back to the financials for a second. What are some highlights from their profit and loss statement?
Their consolidated revenue for the year is pretty healthy, almost 29,000 million INR. But what's really interesting is the jump in their EBITDA. It's gone from 7.7% in fiscal year 2021 to over 13% in fiscal year 2024.
That's a big jump. Shows their RIDI strategy is actually boosting their profitability. What about their balance sheet? How are they handling their assets and liabilities?
Their balance sheet looks really strong. The biggest thing that stands out is their shift from net debt to net cash. That's a clear sign that they're managing their money well.
That's fantastic. Gives them the freedom to invest in growth opportunities and weather any potential storms.
Exactly. And that financial strength lets them focus on long-term strategies like research and development and expanding into new markets.
Now, before we go too deep into those initiatives, I'm curious about their cash flow statement. Profits on paper are one thing, but actually having cash coming in is what matters. What does their statement tell us?
It paints a very positive picture. Their operating activities generated a massive 2,176 million INR in cash flow.
Wow, that's significant. It means their core operations are bringing in real cash, which is a great sign for any business. Tell me more about these investments in research and development.
They're really pushing the boundaries. Wabag has over 125 intellectual property rights, and they're working with top universities and research institutions.
So they're not just building water treatment plants, they're actually trying to advance the technology.
Exactly. They're looking into new tech, like AI for optimizing plants, and even developing their own proprietary water treatment technologies. This constant innovation is key in an industry that's always changing to meet new challenges.
This is where it gets exciting for me. I love seeing how companies are using technology to solve real-world problems, especially in a critical area like water management.
And Wabag is right at the forefront of that. Their commitment to research and development is a big reason for their success and really shows their vision for the future of water treatment.
Okay, so we've covered their history, their strategy, their strong financial position, and their commitment to innovation. But what about their latest quarterly results? Those can give us a closer look at how they're doing right now.
You're right. The quarterly results really give us insight into how Wabag's handling the current global market and what we can expect in the coming months.
Let's dive into those details and see what they tell us about Wabag's current momentum.
The most noteworthy thing is the strength of their order book. It's at a record high, about 115,000 million INR.
Wow, that's a lot of projects. Looks like they've got a clear path for growth over the next few years. But what about their revenue and earnings for the last quarter? What do those look like?
Their consolidated revenue for the quarter was 248 million INR. It's actually a bit lower than the same period last year.
Lower. Not usually what investors want to hear. Any particular reason for the decrease?
It seems like there have been some project delays, mostly because of external factors, like those supply chain disruptions everyone's dealing with, and those ongoing geopolitical tensions.
Ah, yes, the joys of global business. It seems like nobody can escape those disruptions these days. But even with revenue down a bit, did they manage to keep a decent profit margin?
That's the impressive part. Even with those challenges, they actually improved their profitability. Their EBITDA margin for the quarter went up to 13.5%.
Okay, so they're showing they can adapt when things get tough. How do they manage that?
It seems like their focus on operational efficiency and controlling costs is really paying off. They're figuring out how to do more with less, which is a valuable skill in any economy.
I always like to see companies that can thrive even when things are difficult. But let's get specific. What were some of the standout projects this quarter?
One that's doing really well is the huge 400 MLD desalination plant in Chennai, India. It's a great example of Wabag's expertise in large-scale desalination, which is becoming more and more vital as water scarcity grows around the world.
That's a major project. It must be incredibly rewarding to work on something that will bring clean drinking water to so many people. Any other noteworthy projects?
Absolutely. There's the 200 MLD sewage treatment plant project in Pagla, Bangladesh. That's another big one that shows their commitment to improving sanitation and public health in developing countries.
These projects show just how broad Wabag's capabilities are. They're not limited to just one type of project. They're tackling all sorts of water challenges globally. How are their international operations doing overall? Are there any region-specific challenges they're facing?
Their international business is still a big growth driver, with new projects in regions like the Middle East and Africa. But some projects in Europe have hit some snags, mostly because of those geopolitical uncertainties we talked about and some regulatory issues.
Sounds like Europe is a mixed bag, but they're making headway in other areas. Let's shift gears for a moment and talk about dividends. Have they been sharing their profits with shareholders?
Oh, absolutely. Wabag has a really good track record of rewarding their shareholders through dividends. In fact, they just announced a dividend of 6 INR per share for the 2023-24 fiscal year.
That's a nice bonus for investors. It's always a positive sign when a company consistently shares its profits. What about their outlook for the future? What's Wabag saying about the road ahead?
The management team seems pretty optimistic. They're pointing to strong market fundamentals and a healthy pipeline of projects. They expect demand for water treatment solutions to keep growing, driven by things like population growth, urbanization, and industrial expansion.
So they're bullish on the future, but they must be aware of potential challenges too, right? Are they acknowledging any risks or headwinds?
They're definitely not ignoring potential problems. They know that the global landscape is always changing, and staying flexible is key to success. They mention potential headwinds like rising interest rates, inflation, and of course, that ever-increasing competition.
It's always a balancing act, right? Managing the opportunities and the risks. But it sounds like Wabag is well prepared for whatever comes next. They're investing in innovation, expanding globally, and strengthening their financial position.
Exactly. They're not just reacting to the market, they're actively shaping their own future. And they're doing it all while being committed to sustainability and social responsibility.
It's inspiring to see a company focus not only on profits, but also on having a positive impact. They seem to be finding a good balance between business success and responsible practices.
But they're really putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to sustainability. They've got a robust ESG framework, and they're participating in initiatives like the Nmami Ganj program, which is India's big river cleaning project.
That's great to hear. It's so important for companies to think beyond just the bottom line and consider their impact on the environment and society. But let's talk about Wabag's valuation for a minute. How's the market viewing their worth, especially given their strong performance and positive outlook?
Well, their valuation has been going up in recent years, mostly because of their financial performance and strategic moves. But it's important to remember that market valuations can be influenced by lots of things: industry trends, the overall economy, and even investor sentiment, which can be unpredictable.
Good point. The market can be fickle even when a company is doing well. But based on where Wabag is heading, it looks like they're in a good position for continued growth and creating value. Before we finish up our deep dive, I want to bring up something that's been on my mind. We've talked about their financial success and their commitment to sustainability, but what about the ethics of a private company playing such a big role in providing something as essential as water?
That's a really important question, and it's one that needs careful thought. On the one hand, Wabag is clearly dedicated to sustainable practices and social responsibility. They're not just about profit. They're investing in communities, promoting water conservation, and coming up with new solutions to address global water challenges.
That's definitely reassuring. But are there any potential downsides to a private company having so much influence over a resource that's essential for life?
That's the tricky part. As water scarcity becomes a bigger problem globally, companies like Wabag are going to play an even larger role, and that raises questions about affordability, access, and fair distribution.
It's a delicate balance. We need innovation and efficiency, but we also need to make sure everyone can get clean, affordable water.
Exactly. It's a complex problem with no easy answers, but it's a conversation we need to keep having as water becomes an increasingly valuable resource.
All right, we've covered a lot today. We've explored Wabag's journey, their growth strategy, their strong financials, and their commitment to sustainability. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with something to think about as you continue learning about investing. As we wrap up this deep dive into Wabag and the Wabag, I keep coming back to the long-term impact they're going to have on this whole industry. I mean, it's clear they're doing good work, but water scarcity is only going to get worse, right?
Right.
So how can they make sure that everyone who needs these solutions can actually access them and afford them?
That's the big question, isn't it? And it's a challenge not just for Wabag, but for the whole water industry as we move forward.
It's a complicated issue, no doubt about it. But I think this deep dive into Wabag's annual report has given us a lot to consider.
It really has. We looked at their history, their strategic vision, how strong their financials are, and their commitment to innovation and sustainability.
It's fascinating how a company with 100 years behind it can adapt and thrive in a world that's changing so fast.
Absolutely. Their story gives us valuable insights for anyone who wants to understand the water industry, all its complexity, and what challenges and opportunities are coming up.
I agree. And for our listeners out there, I hope this has sparked your interest in how crucial water is and the companies working to ensure its future.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the things that matter.